Hello, my name is Todd Allman, and in this video segment I'd like to give you a very high-level overview of the natural language generator called the Bible Translator's Assistant, or TBTA. Here's a diagram of the system, and you can see there are 5 primary components. The system begins with what we call semantic representations. These semantic representations of the biblical texts are manually developed, and a semantic representation is some formal representation of meaning. And a variety of formats have been developed for various natural language generators. We had to develop our own format for TBTA because we deal particularly with minority and endangered languages. And I'll show you an example of this system in a few moments. But it begins with semantic representations, and then over here is the ontology, which contains all of the concepts that are permitted in the semantic representations. Then there's the transfer grammar. The transfer grammar is responsible for performing the transfer step of the translation process. So in this case, the transfer grammar takes the semantic representations and then restructures them in whatever way is necessary in order to build a new underlying representation that's appropriate for a particular target language. So for example, the transfer grammar generates grammatical relations from semantic roles, or it'll take the various propositions in the semantic representations and build a clause chain. So the transfer grammar is responsible for tasks like those: theta grid adjustment rules, relative clause strategies, etc. Then, after the transfer grammar has built an underlying representation that's appropriate for a particular target language, then the synthesizing grammar is applied. And the synthesizing grammar performs the synthesizing step of the translation process. And this part is very familiar to linguists. The synthesizing grammar consists of phrase structure rules, spell-out rules, morphophonemic rules, agreement rules, and so on. And the final product is target text. There are 2 items in ovals. Those 2 items are static knowledge, which we supply with TBTA. So we build the semantic representations and we supply the ontology. Then the linguist is responsible for building his or her own transfer grammar and synthesizing grammar and the lexicon. Now I'd like to show you TBTA. This is the screen where we do the vast majority of our work. And right now you can see we happen to be in Daniel chapter 1 verse 1, and we're linked to a Korean lexicon and grammar. This large screen is the semantic representation. So this is the semantic representation for Daniel 1:1. And you can see we have various concepts, and beneath each concept is a series of features. And when you rest your cursor on those features, a pop-up appears explaining those features. So each concept has features, and the phrases have features, and each proposition has features, etc. Over here is the transfer grammar, and there are 9 various types of rules. Feature adjustment rules, the relativization, strategies and hierarchy, collocation correction rules, theta grid adjustment rules, etc. Then here's the synthesizing grammar, which has feature copying rules, spell-out rules. Just so you can see an example, here's a spell-out rule that supplies the infil morphemes for Korean. So there are clitic rules, movement rules, phrase structure rules, etc. We can click the Generate button and then look down here in the lower right-hand corner, and you'll see the rules being executed one by one. And this takes just a few seconds, and when it's all done, okay, the final target language text is displayed up here. So this is the Korean equivalent for Daniel 1:1. Now I don't know how many viewers speak Korean well, so let's switch to the English database. And we'll go back to that same screen. And we're again at Daniel 1:1. Now the semantic representation is exactly the same. We have the same concepts, the same features, the same structure, but now we're linked to an English lexicon and an English grammar, just so you can see an example. So you now see this is an English example, an English grammar. We can click the Generate button and again look down here, and we can watch the rules being executed. Takes just a few seconds. Okay, here's the final result. A man named Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylon. Another man named Jehoiakim was the king of Judah. When Jehoiakim had been the king of Judah for about 3 years, Nebuchadnezzar and his army went to Jerusalem. Then they attacked Jerusalem and defeated Jehoiakim and his army. That's the quality of text that you can expect from TBTA. It always generates texts that are easily understandable and grammatically correct, that the texts are semantically equivalent to the semantic representations, and the texts are always at approximately a 6th grade reading level. I'll show you the other major components. We can see the ontology over here. It has various semantic categories. The next video will discuss the ontology in detail. And then the target lexicon is over here. A subsequent video will describe this in detail. So that concludes this particular segment.